What if I told you that I learned of the Tulsa Race Massacre not through curriculum or documentary, but through pop culture? Because history had largely shut its doors on the bombing and burning of the affluent neighborhood of Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma. May 31st, 2021 marked the centennial of the Tulsa Race Massacre. The former, less apt description of the event as a race riot, or simply a riot, has fallen to appropriate disuse. Greenwood's once vibrant African American community, their beings and potentials to become, is ravaged from Oklahoma's material and, to an extent, cognitive landscape. A metaphorical come actual scorched earth conflagration. To underscore this intellection, the descriptor lost/rhetoric denotes the enclave at the apex of its destruction and diminished state thereafter. In comparison, and not to stir false equivalencies of who did what to whom, past racial conflicts in black neighborhoods of Atlanta, 1908, Newark and Detroit in 1967, and Los Angeles in 1992, all concluded with substantial property damage and loss of human life. However, Greenwood holds the macabre distinction of said damage catalyzing the wholesale scrubbing, then subsequent usurpation of a vital enclave. Greenwood, once acclaimed as Black Wall Street by Booker T. Washington, no longer exists in the iteration that it once was. Today, from the original 40-plus blocks of idyllic brick and wood homes and brick and mortar businesses, only a solitary metaphor remains. The Vernon AME Church serves as a historical marker, allegorizing a Genghis Khangian fable of kill all but leave one to tell the tale. First-hand witness and writer Phillips describes the situation surrounding Tulsa: a tinderbox, a powder keg, reflecting the national context of racial strife and anti-blackness. That the rising tide of the Ku Klux Klan engagement signaled and cemented white supremacy as a prevailing human relations philosophy. Black successes and the mature trappings thereof, home ownership, relative economic dependence, and the objective manifestations of wealth, calls to cognitive dissonance for segments of the white community who felt themselves congenitally superior and thus entitled to better lives than those of their black contemporaries. It would only take an overblown reaction to alleged violence. Dick Rowland, a teenage black shoeshiner, assaulting Sarah Page, a white female elevator operator, to give white Tulsans who were hard-bent to racial prejudice and violence a justification to enact frontier justice. Black men, many of them World War I veterans, armed themselves and converged on the courthouse in a call to defense. Their heightened sense of place and well-being stemmed from owning property. This show of force, of agency, proved too much for their white contemporaries. Thus, the infiltrating of Greenwood and systematic burning and bombing the enclave to smolders. A superlative example of Afrofuturistic manifest destiny, we can look at Greenwood through a Heideggerian lens and note that the community is also a work. Heidegger's preoccupation with the painting, Van Gogh's study of shoes, indicates that he is taken up with the idea that these shoes are an equipment, and that the more they are walked in or worked in, the more they are reified in their shoeness. My idea is that the shoes as an equipment or in their shoeness are incrementally intensified in being by their being consistently and reliably being put to use or work. The more used or worked an equipment, the more its being is metaphysically ratified. Greenwood, before its form and matter was destroyed, was in its Greenwoodness an equipment, and in the material plane, an apparatus for self actualization for its black inhabitants. In the metaphysical plane, Greenwood as a use or work affirms being and design, and that is being in the world. To elevate the corporeal ramifications and examine the ontological characters of the black bodies that lived and died during the massacre, worked and leisured in Greenwood, take for a moment to draw out that tableau to its nth. Extant black bodies, labored and exerted breaths, delighted in desserts or aperitifs after hearty meals. In business, fretted over columns of figures, thumbed through tomes on quiet evenings, obsessed over romantic crushes. Endured rivalries in industry. At bedtime, peeked in on the shrouded aspects of their children, perhaps stealing an unbidden kiss before themselves turning in. Within the unspoiled boundaries of Greenwood, black bodies sat serenely in the feathery exhalation of evening breezes, endured sibling rivalries, stargazed with existential inquisitiveness, prayed with conviction, hero worshipped their fathers, ran from spiders where expert mechanics feared the dark, sought the softness of their mother's eyes, hated onions, gossiped incessantly, made love, loathed mornings, were jealous, were generous, drank indulgently, harbored hopes, kept secrets, revered sunrises, cried, laughed, gambled, rested, pondered. All the beings of beings, being. Greenwood's pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness was a pharmakon, an idea which I appropriated from Derrida's Plato's Pharmacy, where text, but in this case a community, exists as both a remedy, a cure, but paradoxically a poison. Again, appropriating the pharmakon. As a hallowed place, Greenwood proved beneficial to early 18th century African Americans. Freer, but not wholly uninhibited from the restraints of the oppressive Jim Crow South, pioneering blacks settled the region of Tulsa, and then, due to commercial necessity and to circumvent subjection to the black codes, established a robust, self-asserted pathway to well-being and well-becoming. This prosperity intensified the potency of the cost/poison dynamic, as unease within the neighboring white populace viewed Greenwood's booming affluence as a threat to Tulsa's existing socioeconomic and social-cultural hierarchy. Lost/rhetoric is a signifying term I coined to amplify any occasion where unemployed and ill-used rhetoric results in existential, physical, psychological, or material damage. Loss is stylized in lowercase to denote the low speech of ill-used rhetoric and willful, employed silence. Rhetoric is capitalized to indicate high speech, where rhetoric bridges understanding between social-cultural or social-political rifts, de-escalates conflict, or tactfully resists marginalization. Local newspapers, like the Tulsa Tribune, at the time were tasked with the ethical mantle of fair reportage. But instead, and in an imprudent lapse of due diligence, published headlines undertoned with anti-black rhetoric. The resulting response was instantaneous. The white lynch mob materialized post-haste. A seemingly multi-generational effort to efface the historical detailing of the massacre was brutally successful. Consider this insight of Tulsa's current mayor, G.T. Bynum, who admitted he'd never heard about the massacre growing up, that his parents didn't hear about it until 2000, that his father, despite being the president of the Historical Society, had not heard about the Tulsa Race Massacre. One superlative outgrowth from the subversion of Greenwood's being and historical scrubbing is Greenwood Rising, a state of the art history center located at the heart of Tulsa's Greenwood district, honoring the legacy of Black Wall Street before and after the Tulsa Race Massacre. Today, Greenwood Rising houses and maintains artifacts that enlighten visitors by way of walk-through tableaus and immersive, interactive displays. Impressively, Greenwood Rising addresses lost rhetoric, as I describe the term, with the inclusion of a dialogue space. The Tulsa Race Massacre is still an ongoing disaster in that when the magnitude of such an event is historically footnoted and absent from historical curriculum, there's an inherent danger of forgetting or verbally can constitute materially inflicting real-world damage. The erection of monuments and historical sites are apt, tangible, and metaphoric spaces for commemoration, but they stop short of making whole the surviving victims. Gregory Ulmer, a professor of electronic languages and cybermedia, theorizes the creation of electric monuments, or memorials, as a means of inward reflection and sites of self-knowledge regarding a disaster. In response to Ulmer's espousal of electricity, I conceived the idea of the Tulsa Race Massacre Museum and accompanying online gift shop that does not sell but would provide upon request an effigie of lost Greenwood, that is, a pyramidal container filled with burned brick, mortar, and wood. After having completed a foray through the museum and gift shop, a souvenir, a symbolic talisman, a tactile reminder of lost Greenwood, a representational that can be referred in instances when lost rhetoric subverts helpful dialogue, and in that vacuum, violence manifests. The lost rhetoric, or in this case, lost Greenwood pyramidal talisman, has its uses as an iconic and pedagogical prop. In the classroom setting, it works conceivably as a practical exercise in semiotics and useful rhetoric. The pyramid can be passed from student to student. Its sensory and theoretical aims to opening discourses on racial disharmony or social, cultural, or social political conflict. Extending into digital realms, the iconography and the fixed meaning of the talisman is to be co-opted by social media users and proliferated online. This is a symbol or reminder to employ and use effective rhetoric. Here, the talisman warding off lost rhetoric during pending or in progress paroxysm of a racial conflict or other social, political, or social cultural strife. When considering the talisman as an icon to restore rhetoric and to stay off lost rhetoric, I don't think it's off target to see the pyramidal as a mnemonic means for empathic dialogue. Lastly, I had the privilege of speaking with author, attorney, and consultant Hannibal B. Johnson, who is the local curator of Greenwood Rising, and I sought him out for guidance as how to best approach my memorial and semiotic talisman. A fount of knowledge, his advisement regarding my foray into Greenwood's history was indispensable. Hearing my ideas, his chief concern was that I not repackage Greenwood's victims as hapless or voiceless.